goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. Hey, we do that every week by sharing the stories and advice from those who are rocking it on the other side. And we also have our quarterly Crowbar Awards, which is where we debut a new creative challenge or brief, whatever you want to call it. We have a new one every 3 months. You can find out who the guest judge is this quarter and what that brief is by going to crowbarawards.com. Hey, if you win a crowbar, chances are you'll break into advertising. Makes sense. And welcome back to Adjunct. This is a segment where we interview the best advertising educators from adjunct level to terminal degree, which is professors with PhDs from across the world. And we know that college classes can cost hundreds, thousands, millions, well, not millions, hopefully not, of dollars. So we decided to give master classes of ad education to your ears for free. Today, you will learn from Merc Heredia-Ferran. Merc is a data strategist at 72andSunny in the daytime. 72andSunny, great full-service creative agency. And by the time you hear this, Merc might actually be might have been moved out to LA. Merc is currently, when we recorded this, in the Chicagoland area. So, more about Merc. Merc is an audience builder, data explorer, and idea connector. Experience using syndicated data and social listening tools to create audience profiles and creative insights, working within the comms department to help land audience insights for creative briefs and creative executions. So, I love this episode. It's so dense and so great. We break down what it means to be a data strategist, who could be best interested in how data strategy uncovers insights to help best identify audiences and world trends that lead to the perfect creative idea at the right place and the right time for the right audience. I'm amped up, as you can tell. And Merc also discusses the decision to pursue a master's degree right after college, even after receiving a full-time strategy offer at a local Chicago agency that was Merc's dream agency, and breaks down why that decision was made. It's good stuff. Today, Merc is also an adjunct lecturer at 2 Big Ten universities. Indiana University, beautiful campus. We also had Bill Schwab on the episode from a couple of months back. And, of course, there's no bias here, but the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So, a lot of good stuff. You're going to want to connect with Merc. And to do that, we have Merc's info below. The LinkedIn route is the best way to do so. Leave a little LinkedIn note. Say you listen to Merc's episode of Breaking and Entering. And we also have secret resources curated by Merc on our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. If you haven't followed yet, you're missing out on some good stuff. So go do that. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I am your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Merc, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. Heredia-Ferran. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, perfect.
Here we go. Welcome. How are you doing today? Where are you at?
I am in the suburbs of Chicago.
Which one?
I am near Orland Park.
South, right?
Yes, the south suburbs of Chicago.
Gotcha. Have you always been from Chicagoland?
I grew up outside of Philly. So, when people ask me where I'm from, it just depends. Sometimes I say outside of Philly, sometimes I say suburbs of Chicago. Depends who's asking.
Okay. Fair enough. We're here to talk today about breaking into advertising as usual. And this is going to be very, very fun because you're a data strategist at 72andSunny. That's 72andSunny, one of the best agencies, best names for sure. And you're also an adjunct professor, adjunct lecturer at 2 universities, both within a Big Ten conference. One is my alma mater as well. That is the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Fighting Illini. And now we're going to talk about how you're currently adjuncting. I don't know if that's a word. You're adjuncting at Indiana University, which is another beautiful campus, great program. We've had on Bill Schwab, the past adjunct episode. So yeah, so let's start off with 72 and Sunny, your role there uh, as a data strategist, because it's a great agency and it's predominantly West Coast. Am I correct with it being based in LA? Is that correct?
Yeah, so our headquarters is in Los Angeles, but we do have an office in New York. We have different clients between the two, so um, most people really work from one office or the other. Data strategy, though, specifically, and the comms group works with kind of like interchanges between the two a bit more. So it's pretty cool. Sometimes I'll work EST hours, sometimes I'll work LA hours, just like depending on what projects I'm on.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So tell us what it means to be a data strategist. And I also want to learn a little bit more about 72 and Sunny. It's been a while since I've had somebody on. So let's start off with the role specifically. What does this mean? Like, what are the basics? Who's interested in this? Who would be good at this role?
Yeah. I can't speak for data strategy in general just because every agency really runs data strategy their own way.
Sure.
I would say data strategy of 5, 6, 7 years ago is a lot more analytical. It's a lot more research. It's a lot more programs and programming, and more recently you see a lot of agencies turning data and analytics into data strategy, so really making it part of the creative output and like a component to help with creative. And 72 has done a really great job of kind of pushing in that direction. So right now there's 3 of us on the team, and we work within the comms team. So that would be comms, social, and data, and we all work together. And for my job specifically, a lot of times it's like helping on pitching, and it's helping on building audiences, finding out who we're supposed to be advertising to, who is the audience for that brand, especially when you have such a short amount of time. You need to learn as much as you can about this brand and who's buying it and who wants to buy it.
Yeah.
You really got to use those tools at your disposal. And a lot of times it's the data strategists that are doing that. So at
Right.
least at 72 and Sunny.
Right. Right. So you're working probably, what's the relationship between a data strategist and the more traditional creative strategist? Are you guys working closely? Like, are you sharing info back and forth? Tell me what it's like at 72 and Sunny.
Yeah. At 72 we don't have creative strategists. Everyone is creative. At least that's how we like to say it.
Sure.
Brand strategy. So we have a bunch of brand strategists. I would say um, they're usually working on 1 to 3 brands probably, and then they work with a comm strategist or a data strategist depending on where they are in their role, whatever they're doing, their assignment, and they'll kind of pull us in. So like if they're starting the process and they need to build something on an audience and they want to learn more about it, then they're going to call the data strategist. If they're a little bit more down the funnel, maybe they're building the creative brief. Sometimes that's a little bit more comms than it is data. And then when you're getting down to like the executions and like where you want to activate, a lot of that's data as well, because you're looking at like where is that audience living, what spaces are they taking up, what apps are they using, et cetera. And a lot of that is based on our data.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So what tools are you tapping into to come up with these correct solutions at the right place at the right time for the right person?
Yeah. There's a lot of simple ones that you can use, just like brand strategists will do just like interviews, right? And a lot of times you can use that interviews to back up information that we're going to find on syndicated data tools. So we could use MRI Simmons, which is a big one. It's
Hmm.
one that a lot of students use. We're using in both of my classes. We're going to use MRI Simmons. You can use GWI. It's kind of just another form of MRI Simmons, but it's global. You can use just like social listening. So you can go and there's like one called Infigi, and there's a lot of different brand ones. You could just go on Twitter Advanced Search, and you can just
Yeah.
search on there, and um, you don't even need a program. You can just look up something. So you can type in your brand, let's say you have Nike and you want to know how people are feeling about the campaign. You can put in Nike and ad and a certain time frame, and you can see what people are saying. I think like the free tools end up a lot of times being the best ones and the richest examples that we can use for our campaigns, because it's like especially on like Twitter or Reddit, people are really giving their authentic selves and what they're thinking of the brands, and it's a really good way to get a pulse check.
So I guess how do you find success? Like what's like the perfect outcome? Are you like when they call you up, they're looking to refine a specific segment? Are you getting like what is a successful outcome from your position, would you say? Like, do you have any recent examples of something you've uncovered maybe? Walk me through that.
Um, yeah, so I guess it would depend on what part of the process we're working in. So like I said before, a lot of the things that we've been doing recently is a lot of pitches, and so I would say the best outcome for that is if we're able to come up with an audience and we can um, really tell a story of who this audience is, and really get you to learn, the spaces they're taking up, how they're feeling, what they're doing, and give this to creatives, and so that it will affect the final creative output, and you're reaching new audiences. I think is probably, that's the best thing that we can get out of our
Yeah, I think
position.
all of advertising really is the first thing you need to understand is who you're talking to. Right? It's
Right.
so
Yeah.
important, and we learn in standard education that it starts off with the demographics. Where are they? Who are they? Like, how much are they making? What are their religion, age, sex, all that stuff are pretty basic, right? And then you get into psychographics, like what do they think about? What do they care about? What keeps them up at night? I guess beyond those 2 things, are you just, like, trying to get even more granular after that and build a cohesive story, a customer journey? Like, what do they do when they wake up? What are they thinking about? Where are they going? Are they commuting? I think this is also so interesting. So any sort of insight and, like, beyond what I know of the demographics, psychographics, and, like, basic customer journey, I guess, what else do you try to uncover?
Yeah. I think a big one we've been trying to do recently is a lot of like cultural trends. So like what cultural trends is our audience kind of resonating with? And also like a big thing we're trying to do is be more brand responsible, right? So like the thing that you have with data strategists is you're really painting the picture of who the audience is. And a lot of times if we're talking about America, the majorities are going to kind of like shape who that is, right? So if America is 70% white, then your audience is usually going to be a higher percentage of that as well. And so it's just making sure that you are also looking at these smaller communities and audiences and making them a part of your final product, so that again, when the creatives are seeing it, they're not being, I guess, skewed by the majorities. Um, and that's how we try to be brand responsible. We also try to figure out different things about them. So when we're working on Zillow, we try to figure out where are they moving to, how are they feeling, who are they living with,
Mhm.
are they gonna get a dog in the next 6 months, so you have an
Yeah,
ad with a dog or something. So it's like sometimes very granular, but it's like I feel like sometimes those are the biggest insights that you can find, especially like these things that are so granular are sometimes the things that hit closest to home.
I like that. And how do you, I guess, this sounds like an innately curious position as any sort of strategy role. Um, I guess, like, what drew you to data strategy specifically? For me, that seems pretty scary. I don't know what you're doing on the day to day, combing through large Excel files or like Excel pivot tables. I don't know what it actually is. Like, I guess, can you demystify, like, first off, like, what drew you to data specifically? And, like, can you demystify and, like, encourage people to entertain this role?
Yeah. It sounds way scarier than it is. At least how we've been pushing for it is a move from analytics and a move towards creativity. So hopefully, as agencies are building this out, data strategy becomes more closer to creative than it is to the analytics department. Um, and so, what drew me to data specifically? I don't know. I think I used to work at Schaefer and Carter, and the department is super small for strategy, and we would just kind of do everything ourselves. And I kind of ended up doing the data strategy part of that role, even though it was brand strategy. And so like when 72 was looking for a data strategist and they were like listing out the requirements of that role, I was thinking, man, I've kind of done all these things that they're asking for, even though I've been in brand strategy. So in a lot of places, a lot of agencies, the brand strategists actually are already doing this. They're doing social listening. They're
Yeah,
they're telling a story of their audience. And so it's not a lot of Excel. Sometimes it definitely is exporting these files and figuring out these specific percentages of things, but then you're finding the insights within those percentages, and that's kind
that's
of
the
when it
fun
comes
part.
back to strategy. Exactly.
I've the most fulfilling part I would have to imagine is connecting the dots and discovering something new. To me, I think it would be really interesting if you have a brand strategist that's going one direction and you come in and be like, well, actually, like, this insight also uncovers something that's super interesting that can either reinforce that or maybe pivot it slightly. And I'm sure that's happening in your career. And that's what they want, right? There's so much data out there and somebody needs to come through it and make some sense out of it. So I think what would you say is the like who would be good at this? Like uh um who should entertain this? What do they do? Like what's the what are some of those like insights about somebody that would be good at data strategy? Like are they somebody that reads a lot? Like walk me through like that persona in a way.
Yeah, I think probably people who are really into psychology as well, sociology. I think a lot of it, at least right now, is like telling those stories of people that you might not be able to meet, parts of communities that you might not be a part of. So really immersing yourself in those things. If you really like, sure, if you really like reading, or if you really like kind of people watching, then data strategy is probably something that you'll find interesting, because it's basically people watching, but with Excel.
Yeah.
You're just going through those numbers and
At,
and finding those insights.
at a much larger like scale, I feel like if you're having all this data, you could probably make some really strong um, insights and connection points. So thank you for that. Let's get into then a little bit about 72 and Sunny. I think it's been a while since I checked in. What's it like over there? How has the culture changed? And what are you guys working on? What can you speak towards? Like, are you guys going in? Obviously, you're remote. Like, just give me the rundown. Is it still amazing as I've seen? Like do you guys still have the NFL? I don't know if I can speak on that, but you give me the spiel, why it's great, why you're leaving. If you're leaving, you never said that, but just give me the rundown.
Not leaving anytime soon. I've really liked the brands that we've picked up recently. So we've picked up Wingstop and Zillow.
There you go.
Uh, a few other ones along the way, Welch's. I'm probably blanking on another one.
Yeah, it's a hard question.
Um, but we're actually we do have a return to office mandate.
Nice.
Um, it yeah, it's just
So
just
you're
uh,
going to
just
LA.
I am moving to LA. A week from now. But yeah, so it's a new type of return to office mandate, really. 72 knows that working from home has been working in a lot of ways, and in some ways, it probably
Just like every
doesn't
agency.
exactly help. Yeah,
Every
exactly.
agency is kind of like battling with this now, returning back to office hybrid schedule, definitely. So, well,
Yeah,
that's
so
fun. You get to go to beautiful LA. I mean, doesn't that's not the worst thing in the world, right?
Yeah, so our return to office mandate is actually only the first 4 days of every month. It's so that we can have workshops at that time, invite clients
Hmm.
there, kind of
Smart.
work on creative together. And so, if you're not living from LA, you don't have to move to LA. You can actually just fly there
Yeah,
and
the
be there
first
for
four
4 days
days.
and come back. But I've really been craving going into the office and
Yeah.
experiencing that. So,
Yeah.
um, I took the chance, and I'm moving there soon. So.
Congrats. Well, best of luck. I mean, you can't go wrong from Chicago to LA, Chicagoland to LA. Um, the summers and the winters will be much better. So that's exciting. All right. How'd you break into all this? What's your story? When did you say I want to make ads for a living? Where were you? What were you thinking at this time?
Yeah. Well, I know exactly where I was. I was walking down the hallway of my dorm at the University of Illinois, and there was a flyer, and it said, uh, class. It was a class in the basement. And it was called People, Places, and the Pillsbury Doughboy. And it only showed up. It was only once a week on Mondays, for like 2 hours, and that was it. I was like, this seems like some extra, just like some easy hours to put on.
So
Sure,
this
why
was
not?
the class People, Places, in Pillsbury Doughboy. Was it that was the name of the class?
Yeah, that was the name
Who
of the
taught
class.
it?
Stephen Hall.
Steve Hall taught this, and it was a
Yeah.
100 level or a 200 level elective.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So went to the basement. There's only like 4 kids in the class.
Greg Hall
Um,
basement, or was this Weston?
Weston, yeah.
Yep.
You know your halls.
Yep.
Um, and so we're learning about advertising. Kind of just learning about like the people that are in it, the places you can
What
go,
year? What year were you again at the time?
and well, I was a
Freshman?
freshman. I was a
Okay.
freshman.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Early. And what were you currently studying at the
Well,
time?
I was undecided. I actually did not choose advertising until my junior year.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Well, it's possible. I mean, a lot of people transfer into this major, especially at U of I.
oh yeah, I took my last 2 years. I was averaging 27 credit hours a semester. Um, which
Oh my goodness.
yeah, because
Is that even
I did
legal?
I had to get approval. Yeah, I had to get approval. It was a lot. Well, I did not have a major until the start of junior year. You're required to leave DGS, right? You can only be there freshman and sophomore year. And I couldn't decide between advertising and psychology. And then junior year, I was like, I'm going to do both. And then I was rushing to finish the credits to be
So
able
you
to
had double
graduate on time.
majored?
Yes. Yeah.
Looking back, would you recommend that again?
I would definitely do it again. Probably sooner though.
Yes.
It's just,
That's the
there's a
one
lot of
thing
classes.
that's the one thing we're constantly preaching on this podcast is it it helps to know what you want to do as early as possible. That's why we created this podcast, really, to show the different roles and the different agencies and the different jobs so they can connect with people and ask them questions so they can get closer to that. And then you can work backwards. That's really the key to knowing as early as possible. Now, that might incite a little bit of stress, a little bit of nervousness to the listeners, but I think that's fine. I think that it should like you should be hungry to curious like and curious to figure out something. And it doesn't have to stick for the long term. You can end up changing. It's better to have some sort of target in the right area, right? Than not to kind of like go a little bit aimless for a while. Like that's always been my POV on it. Like you figured it out and you had to work harder. And those 27 credit hours, that sounds like a nightmare. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that it's always easier to work towards a goal than it is to kind of just work aimlessly. So
Of course.
when I was in People, Places, in the Pillsbury Doughboy, the last class of that semester was we got to go to agencies in Chicago, and we stepped into Schaefer Condon Carter
Of course.
freshman year. They're all wearing jeans. This building is super old, like exposed brick. There's a bar people are drinking at. There's a drum set right there. They work for the Chicago Cubs, the Blackhawks. And in that moment, I was like, I don't care what it takes. I am going to work here. And I actually there was only 5 people in that class, so I had signed up my sister to do that class as well. And so she's standing next to me, and I turned to her, and I was literally like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to work here one day. And I worked towards that goal nonstop, right? I did those 27, 28 credit hours. I started doing every possible internship I could from then on. And
Did you know what role you wanted at that time, or when did you figure out what role you wanted?
I did not know that strategy was a role in advertising until I took Brittany Duff's class. So that would have
Mhm.
been junior year. So it was 2 years later. I just knew I wanted to be in advertising. I was like, these are my people. But I didn't
Yeah.
even know strategy was a thing. So junior year, I take Brittany Duff's class, and I realized that that's what I wanted to
What was
do.
that? An advertising like insights class? Like
Yeah, consumer insights. I
sure.
think I have the book on my desk, and I read it.
Which book?
I
Brand
read
Gap?
the you know, predictability irrational. Predictability irrational. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't read
I
that.
read I read the entire thing before the class started. I was just gonna read the first chapter because that was what was asked. And I did not buy books at U of I. Did my best. Like when they said this is a required reading, this is an optional reading, I just did my best to not buy any books. But I don't know why. I just like I picked up this book at the library and I was like, I'm gonna buy it.
And what ended up being one chapter, finish the book before the class started, which is a great, hey, that's a great tactic right there. You get ahead, you know everything.
Yeah, I finished the book before the class started. First class of the semester, Brittany Duff asked a question in the class, just like asking, like, what do you think would happen if, what do you think would happen in this scenario? And the scenario was one in the books. She was actually asking something in the book, and so no one was raising their hand.
What was the
Um,
scenario? Do you remember?
uh,
It's okay if you don't
no,
remember. You can pass.
no, yeah, I can't remember it right now.
Damn,
Um,
I wanted you to quiz me.
um,
But she asked
yeah.
about a scenario in the book, and you're like, oh, I got it.
Yeah, so like no one's raising their hands. So, like I raised my hand. And I hate raising my hand in class, and I was like, I can't guess because I actually know the answer because I read this book, um, and like talking like with 150 people, just like super stressed out. Say the answer. She asked me to stay after class, and I ended up doing research with Brittany Duff
There you go.
afterwards because of it. Yeah, exactly. And
So doing research undergrad, why would you do that? What was the purpose? Like, do you get paid or just
um,
for academic pursuit of knowledge?
I think you don't get paid, unfortunately.
Sometimes you
Uh,
can.
yeah,
Sometimes,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, But I think it was just like learning more about what interests me at the time and like um if you've never had an internship before, I think research experience is a really good thing to put on your resume because that's something that you can put on there. And then when you're looking for your first internship, at least you've done some of the things that they're going to require in that first internship, right? You've come up with a hypothesis, you were able to do research, you were able to meet
Great for a
deadlines and
strategist
do
or a
certain things.
researcher. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And you can do it if you go up to a teacher, like almost any teacher, if they're doing research needs help. So you can go up freshman year. You don't need any experience. You can go up freshman year, ask your teachers if they need any help with research, or if you can do your own research project and if they can just supervise. That's another thing that you can do. So
I love that.
I think it's a great
If they have
opportunity.
PhDs, they're likely mandated to do some sort of research, right? That's why they have the PhD, they're doctors, and they're required by the university for the most part to publish. So they're stressed out all the time. In addition to their teaching, they're trying to get published as many articles as possible every semester. So yeah, that's a really great tactic. Hey, I want to help you out, and then you'll become really close with them. You'll get those basic understandings. And I think this makes a lot of sense for that strategy role. That's something that we haven't talked about on this podcast. So that's amazing. I'm glad we brought that up. So you did that. What'd you research, and um, how'd you break in? What was the break in moment?
Yeah, my research was on feedback. I actually had I don't remember the class at the time, but I just like wasn't liking how you would turn in an assignment. You might get you'd get grade and like a paragraph or something of feedback, right? As a lot of classes go, and then you move on to the next assignment, and you don't really like. Let's be honest, you're not really going to work on that project anymore. You might see the feedback and you move on, and I think that a lot of times the best creative and the best things are, when you get that feedback and then you start working again, you start doing things again, and you start making it better, right? And so a lot of people start doing that when they start working on their portfolio, but that's 4 or 5 years down the line. A lot of times people don't even work on their portfolio until they've graduated, and so um,
That's a
I
problem.
started, yeah, right. So I started doing my the research on like what is the best type of feedback you can provide to get the best creative output. And so is that like closed loop feedback? Is that saying no, it's not this way, it's this way? Or is it being more open and saying like these are different things that you can do, etc. Um, yeah, that's what I started doing research wise. My break again, I said I really my dream was SEC from when I stepped in there freshman year.
Schaefer County and
Um,
Carter, Chicago. Yep. Full service small shop.
Yeah, it's just my absolute dream. And so I started working everywhere I could. I started getting internships everywhere I could. One internship to the next internship, the next internship.
I mean, how many
And
are we talking here within a 2-year period?
within a 2 year period, I would say around 10 or 11. I didn't. Well, freshman year through senior year, I'd always had this urge to just like learn as much as possible outside of the classroom. I held around 6 or 7 jobs every semester. I worked in the RSO office, the Registered Student Organization office. I worked at the football field. I was an usher at the basketball stadium. I was parking at State Farm Center. I was a lifeguard. I did research in the marketing department as well. I worked within the IMBA program. So I was always like kind of jumping back and forth. But again, junior, senior year, I started, kind of honing in on these marketing internships. I worked at the Chicago Bears in the summer, and from there, I just got a call, and I like pick it up, and it's the director of strategy at SEC. She's asking about my LinkedIn, and like the paragraph I have in my LinkedIn, and since then, I have made that a part of my core curriculum when I am teaching at my like adjunct professor at U of I and Indiana University. Is the first assignment we do is we fix up LinkedIn's and that specific paragraph, just because of, that might be your one shot when people are just scrolling through your LinkedIn. And so she was asking me specifically about like my research experience and my interest in research. And we talked for like an hour. She said I might hear back from one of the recruiters there. um, Started interviewing for the next like 2 months at SEC. It was just like I was so stressed. It was my dream for 4 years. And at the end of summer, just finished with the Chicago Bears. Like 2 days later, I got the job at SEC. A week after SEC, I started grad school at University of Oregon, and that's definitely that was my first break.
Got it. So she reached out. She's looking at your LinkedIn. And what'd she say again about the LinkedIn?
She was asking about like the paragraph you had, that little write up. So I had that I really loved doing research and social listening. At the time, I was working as an intern at Planet Propaganda, great shop in Wisconsin, as a social strategy intern. So I had a little bit of info there about that.
Got it. So then she stumbled across that, asked you a question, and you started interviewing for a couple months, you said? It's a slow
Yeah, it
process
was crazy.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Well,
Sometimes
to
it's
be
super
fair,
slow and sometimes it's instantly fast, right? Sometimes they're like, we need to fill this role ASAP. And it just depends on the situation. So they probably were taking their time because they had the time and they want to get the right fit. So that actually speaks volume. They were probably taking the time, looking at a lot of different people. So the fact that they called you up and finally hired you, that's a really great accomplishment.
yeah, no, I was so excited. The whole process. It was 2 months, but it felt like just a couple days. It was just
Yeah.
so exciting.
So then why did you enroll at University of Oregon for your higher education?
Yeah.
Because you already broke in. What's the point now?
Um, right. No, exactly. A lot of people have asked me this question. It's like, why? SEC asked me this question, like, why are you going to be? Because I went from they offered me a full-time position to part-time because they
So
didn't think I could do it with my master's.
oh,
Yeah.
what'd you say? What was your rationale?
Yeah. So I think to this day, like I think the most important thing that you can do is continue to learn. If you stop learning, you stop doing great work, in my opinion, because you have to keep up with trends. You have to keep up, making sure that you're being brand responsible, whatever that brand responsible means in that moment, right? Because it's always changing. Um, and so I knew I wanted to do a master's program when I was, man, I would say sophomore, junior year.
So it's always a part of the blueprint.
It was always part of the blueprint. But I would say, looking back on it now, it did not have as big as an impact as I wish it had had. And I think it's mostly because you can't really teach a lot of things that you're doing in advertising. You can't really teach original thought. It's very difficult to teach creativity after a certain point, especially in these master's programs. Um, and within a traditional setting. But I do think it works for some people, right? If you are someone that's super motivated when you are in a traditional setting, um, that's the type of work that you're going to do the best in. Then yes, a master's program is gonna help you out. But if you've already broken in and you're looking for your next step, I think networking, I think maybe a smaller boot camp, a lot of free resources are out there. You don't really have to be spending the big bucks
Yeah,
to go.
I hear you. Um, it's a very, very, we could talk for hours on this. But Also, you just like, was this right after you graduated undergrad?
Yes, yes.
You got your
I think that
full-time offer. So, one of my views is it's also good to wait a couple years. Like, for me, I waited 3 years. I'm now enrolled in a master's program back at University of Illinois. And when you just remove yourself a little bit and you forget about the learning process a little bit and you're a little bit more removed, you get into like the professional world. It's nice to dip your toes back into it. Well, I'm doing a professional program that's online predominantly and a lot of group projects like our traditional advertising classes are. It's just a whole different like perspective when you have some work experience under your belt. Um, but also, I know that the economy can be bad sometimes. Like, I'm not sure what the current state is right now, but it doesn't seem too great. So, I noticed some people, especially in 2020 when I graduated, they immediately enrolled into a master's program or a 1 year plus up, whatever it might look like, just so they had the time and they knew that they were going to be living at home or whatever. So that made a lot of sense for some people. I kind of envy them, but then again, like now I'm just going at it so much more mature and with the understanding of the industry. It's just good to be reminded of the fundamentals. And I don't know what else is going to happen next 'cause I just started.
right,
Do you,
yeah.
do you wish you would have waited or do you think it would have been the same regardless?
I think it totally depends on your goals. The goals that I was trying to reach, I think I've always been someone that like takes everything as a stepping stone. And so like once I had gotten SEC, I was like, okay, what's next? And sometimes I definitely need to stay in the moment. Um, but I think that a master's in advertising and brand responsibility, like you said, exactly. If you're only 1 year out, how much more information are you going to learn? Especially when a lot of these master's programs are for people who did not study traditionally advertising in their undergrad. So a lot of these students are going to be people um, who are brand new to advertising. So again, it just really depends on your goals. I'm currently looking to do a PhD eventually, just because I do want to continue teaching, and I think long term I'll
Oh,
actually end up
really?
probably just teaching.
Where do you want to do your PhD at?
I'm currently looking at Columbia. They have a program where if you've
In
taught for three
Chicago
years,
or?
Columbia, New York. It's a dream
Yeah,
school,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
always
yeah.
dreaming, always
So
dreaming.
what so you said if you adjunct for 3 years, they give you what do they do?
Yeah, well, to be accepted into the program, you need a minimum of 3 years teaching experience. So this is like still a year and a half down the line. Um, but I if I go into teaching, I want to, the
Yeah.
biggest dream. I want to be a dean of an advertising program or college of communications or college of media somewhere.
Mhm.
And so a PhD in education is usually required, or a PhD in advertising or whatever you're going to teach.
Okay. I know UT Austin has a good PhD program. I think Michigan State. Uh, I'm sure some other ones too that come to mind, but
Yeah, U of I.
cool.
U of I's got a good
Yeah,
PhD in communications.
love it. Well, amazing. Thank you for shedding light on that. Final advice. I know we talked a lot, but I want to wrap it up here. So, looking back, we hit on some amazing things. We talked about 72. We talked about data strategy. We talked about kind of knowing, like, it's good to know or have some sort of career mapping early. We talked about higher education. I mean, this has been a dense episode. But if there's one thing that you want to look back on now, knowing what you know now, if you're talking to young Merce, what would you say to young Merce about your future, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. I'd probably say like don't sweat the big shops. I think everyone's dreaming of going to the big, the Widens, the 72s, the Drogas, the Martins. Um and at
It's
the end of
hard.
the
Yeah.
day,
I
like
mean, everybody falls in
yeah,
that trap.
and exactly, and like at the end of the day, you can do great work just about anywhere. And so I think not sweating the small stuff for sure. I think also like the most important brand you're ever going to work on is yourself, and so like spending the time on yourself and the things that you enjoy is really going to help out in the long run. Like um, if that's research, if that's specific creatives, a form of creative content, if that's something you really like doing on social media, whatever it is, I think that when you work on yourself, you worked on your personal brand, it really shows. And especially when you're trying to break into the industry, any type of difference that can set you apart from other people is is huge, especially when you have these applications that are, 200, 300, 400 people that are applying to these things. And then I guess final point to that would be networking. It's so big. I had no idea it was a thing until I graduated, and it was a little late. But networking is such a big part about advertising. It's something, I mean, personally, I hate it. I think it's it's hard to break into because of it, and so I try to do my best to help my students start networking from the beginning of class, and learn how to do that in an authentic way, not just like spamming everyone with the same message, but learning that if it's going to be a part of advertising, the advertising industry that you're going to be in for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, I guess like learning how to play that game.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Merce, how can people reach out to you if they have any more questions?
Yeah. Well, now I'm always on LinkedIn, probably on there
There we go.
like every day to start the morning. Um,
It's the best.
Probably the best. Yeah.
Everybody, shoot Merce a note when you're connecting. Just a little bit goes a long way. Heard your podcast, loved it. Would love to talk more. I think that's the best route. Any sort of networking, it's a little tip. Take the time to personalize the invite. You get a certain amount of characters, fill that in, and Merce will be sure to connect with you. Right, Merce?
Absolutely. Of
Cool.
course.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been a dense, amazing episode. I learned a lot, been reminded a lot. So, and I want to talk to you about the PhD thing more after.
Yeah, of course. Just hot takes on that though.
Yeah,
So
no, I think this is really cool. I like when people have higher ambition like that. I kind of fall into that like stepping stone philosophy as well. So let's talk. All right. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.